When I was 17, Ethan Tilney and I discovered that we were living inside a sweet romance novel. He was the male lead in the book, while I was just a background character. Ethan was so angry that he tore the book apart and said to me, "I don't care about being the male lead. I won't like anyone else except you." When I was 22, just like the book said, I was going abroad. Ethan touched my head and promised me, "When you come back, we will get married." At 27, I returned home. I came back to attend Ethan and the female lead's wedding. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. There was 1 hour left before the wedding began. I stood in the hotel lobby, staring blankly at the names on the welcome sign. Groom Ethan Tilney and bride, Connie Storm. It felt like I was 17 again. I had pulled an unknown book from the corner of the library, only to suddenly see the cover that read, "Male lead Ethan Tilney. Female lead, Connie Storm." It was like receiving a Pandora's box. I was caught in a dilemma, afraid to look further. "What are you looking at?" 17-year-old Ethan suddenly appeared. He leaned over from behind, resting his head lightly on my shoulder. "Who is the idiot that wrote a novel using my name?" He grabbed the book, grumbling as he read. "What kind of stupid names are these? And Connie Storm? The person I like is Arista Wheatley. Arista, where is my Arista?" He flipped through the book, his voice growing quieter and his face turning pale. The book had 22-year-old Ethan as the male lead, telling the romantic love story between him and the female lead. Everything in the book, except for the future parts, matched reality perfectly. And his Arista was just a background character appearing in flashbacks. "I don't care about being the male lead. I won't like anyone else except you." Ethan was so angry his eyes turned red, and his hands trembled as he tore the book apart. "Arista, don't believe it. That person definitely isn't me." I said nothing. 17-year-old Ethan hugged me, sobbing and stubbornly saying, "I hate summer. Arista, from now on, I will hate summer the most." The young man's sobs gradually got drowned out by the noise around us. I snapped back to reality, noticing the sunlight climbing up my shoulder. Following that ray of light, I looked up out the window, suddenly realizing, it's summer now. It's so hot to have a wedding in the middle of summer. It's unbearable. A middle-aged woman walked into the hotel, wiping sweat and complaining to her companion. "Did you check the calendar? Today isn't exactly a good day." What were the Tilneys thinking? Ethan Tilney was just eager to get married. I heard he proposed to the bride 5 times before she finally agreed. That woman's companion looked proud to know the gossip. The Tilneys have been planning this wedding for years, so once the bride nodded her head in agreement, they set it up in just 7 days. Wow, Ethan must really like that girl named Connie Storm. The woman's exclamations faded with her footsteps. I couldn't help but start reminiscing. How much did Ethan in the book love Connie Storm? He loved her so much that he started quietly preparing for the wedding just 6 months after meeting her. He loved her so much that even though they were mutually in love, he cautiously took 5 years to fully enter her world out of fear. Even though he was naturally impatient, flamboyant, and reckless. He loved her so much that he completely forgot. At 17, he picked up a corner of that torn book page. In the blank space, he childishly wrote, "I, Ethan Tilney, warn every author who writes stories. First, Ethan Tilney does not want to be the male lead. Second, the only name Ethan Tilney will ever love is Arista Wheatley. Third, without any alteration of will, Ethan Tilney will always, always, only love Arista Wheatley." "Mom, what does this say?" A little girl was standing in front of the welcome wall, pointing at a line of text. Following her gaze, I saw the words written there. "Using this grand ceremony, we invite you to witness our decision to hold hands for a lifetime. Ethan Tilney and Connie Storm." 15 minutes had already passed. I was still standing foolishly at the door, unable to take that step forward. "Arista." A familiar voice suddenly called from behind. I had just turned my head when my arm was urgently grabbed. "It really is you. Arista, you're finally back." I was pulled into a thin, fragrant embrace, and an unspoken sob fell into my ear. A bitter taste rose in my throat as I struggled to open my mouth. Mrs. Tilney. Mrs. Tilney let out an uncontrollable sob and quickly covered her mouth. It's my fault. After the college entrance exams, at Ethan's 18th birthday party, he invited me to the Tilney house under the pretense of celebrating. We had just entered when we ran into his mother. "Mom, let me introduce you. This is your future daughter-in-law, Arista Wheatley." Ethan proudly held my shoulder. "Arista, this is our mom, your future mother-in-law." I stood on tiptoe to cover Ethan's mouth, just as Mrs. Tilney delivered a playful knock on his forehead. In Ethan's cry of pain, we paused, then smiled at each other. That was my first meeting with Mrs. Tilney. It set the tone for our interactions going forward. Ethan causing trouble, me restraining him, and Mrs. Tilney tidying up. In the end, we were all laughing. On my 20th birthday, Mrs. Tilney gave me the Tilney family's heirloom jade bracelet. She solemnly promised, "Arista, if Ethan ever wrongs you, I'll kick him out of the house and never acknowledge him as my son again." Today, as Mrs. Tilney apologized to me, I hugged her back, lifting my hand to gently pat her back. All I could say in return was, "Mrs. Tilney, it's not your fault." Mrs. Tilney was the first to let go. "Arista, this isn't the place to catch up." She quickly wiped her eyes and regained her composure, inviting me. "It's hot outside, come in and sit." I lowered my head, letting her take my hand, and without any defense, I stepped into the banquet hall. After just a few steps, Mrs. Tilney suddenly stopped, her voice tense. "Arista, don't misunderstand." I looked up in confusion and saw the wedding decorations. Golden wheat spikes mixed with sunflowers, complemented by various autumn-colored flowers, formed a romantic pastoral scene. Scarecrows stood on either side, with rustic baskets and fruits and vegetables arranged, and a crescent moon hanging above the stage. It was like a Van Gogh painting. Like walking from summer straight into autumn. My breath stopped. "Arista, don't misunderstand, the wedding schedule is tight. This scene was designed by Ethan a few years ago, and we didn't have time to change it." I gripped Mrs. Tilney's hand tightly and interrupted her. "Mrs. Tilney, where is Ethan now?" "Arista." I stared at the tip of the moon on the stage, where a wheat spike was blooming abruptly. Maybe a grain of wheat had fallen from God's hand and was blown here by the wind? With a stubborn hope I shouldn't have, I asked again. "Mrs. Tilney, where is Ethan now?" Mrs. Tilney was silent. After a long time, she sighed. "He's taking wedding photos with Connie. They're in room 1019. I turned around and ran out without hesitation. In the rapidly passing noisy scenes, I suddenly had an illusion. 17-year-old Ethan Tilney was waiting for me. But in fact, everything between Ethan Tilney and me began when I was 16. In the second year of high school, on the first day of the new term. I walked into the classroom early, habitually wanting to sit in the front row. A whiff of osmanthus fragrance suddenly floated into my nose, like a mysterious pull. I deviated from my original spot and sat in the back row by the window, closer to the osmanthus tree. The classroom gradually became noisy, and I buried myself in my books until a strange noise came from beside me. Ethan slammed his school bag on the desk with a thud. He was wearing a white shirt, looking down at me, and casually asked, "Hey, what's your name?" His expression and tone were casual, but I sensed a bit of malice. I looked at him inexplicably. "Arista Wheatley." Ethan chuckled. "I asked for your name, not the plant's name." I lowered my head and ignored him. My first impression of him was that he wasn't very cultured. During the self-introduction session, I said on stage, "My name is Arista Wheatley." He leaned back in his chair, lazily asked, "Which Wheatley?" I glanced at him again, with no expression. "The Wheatley which related to wheat. He seemed to understand, elongating his words, "Oh." I inexplicably walked back to my seat, only to see him suddenly reach out his hand to me. "Hello." He smiled with curved eyes, "Miss Wheat." I was suddenly tripped by the chair leg. I sadly realized I had become desk mates with someone who wasn't very cultured. Later, I found out Ethan was actually the notorious school heartthrob. The seat by the window in the back row was implicitly his, and I had taken his spot. When Ethan asked for my name back then, his underlying message was actually, "Hey, how dare you sit in my spot?" I thought it was so childish. Maybe it was because my parents had been working abroad for years, and I had been living alone since freshman year. I matured earlier than my peers and was indifferent by nature, with no friends. I was really not good at dealing with people like Ethan. He would casually ask me, "Hey, Miss Wheat, can I borrow your homework to copy?" He could also, after playing basketball, walk through the crowd naturally towards me. Pointing to the untouched bottle of water in my hand with a smile, he would say, "Miss Wheat, can I borrow your water? You don't mind, right?" His demeanor and tone were casual, yet not abrupt or presumptuous. On the contrary, it felt as if he was extremely close to you. In my mind, I quietly summed up this trait of his as having the charm of a bad boy. Until one day, I saw him on the playground rejecting a bottle of water from another girl. His reason was, "Sorry, I never accept things from girls. I don't want to cause any misunderstandings." The girl was not convinced. "But you accepted the water from your desk mate. That was borrowed." Ethan tilted his head and said with a smile, "Besides, there's no misunderstanding between us." What did that mean? I froze not far away, experiencing a brain freeze for the first time in my life. Ethan, however, glanced at me and his smile reached his eyes. He walked over step by step. "Miss Wheat, are you thinking now that Ethan seems to treat you a bit special?" He bent slightly, resting his hands on his knees, and got closer to my eyes. "Don't think about it." His face shone brilliantly against the light, and he said, "Miss Wheat, you are special to me." I rushed into the elevator like a madwoman and pressed the button for the 10th floor. As the elevator ascended slowly, my vision was filled with vivid memories. I saw 16-year-old Ethan, lazily leaning against the classroom window. He tilted his head to look at me, smiling as he asked, "Miss Wheat, can't you see that I'm pursuing you?" The elevator reached the 3rd floor. I saw 17-year-old Ethan, whispering to me during a literature class. The teacher was explaining classical terms, and he leaned close to my ear to ask, "Miss Wheat, do you know how to explain the term love me, love my dog?" Before I could answer, he handed me a note that read, "Love me, love my dog means, because I like Miss Wheat, I love every grain of rice on every ear of wheat." Ethan Tilney, who had no literary talent, wrote the most beautiful love words in the world at 17. The elevator reached the 6th floor. I saw 22-year-old Ethan at a bustling airport. He gently hugged me, patting my head and promising, "When you come back, we'll get married." The elevator reached the 9th floor. All the scenes finally froze on that day. After we finished reading that novel book, Ethan and I walked out of the library. No, the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Ethan pulled me to a corner, pinched my face, and asked through gritted teeth, "Arista, how could you be so heartless?" I looked at him in confusion, hearing his aggrieved complaint. "How could you be a mere background character? If I lost my mind and ended up with another woman, how could you stand by and do nothing?" He bit my chin lightly but firmly, threatening, "I forbid you to be a mere background character. You should be the villainous supporting actress, to crash the wedding. To take me away. Promise me, you must come and take away the mistake in me, okay?" I wanted to laugh at his silliness, but seeing the panic in his eyes, my heart softened instantly. "Okay, I promise you, even if I have to go against the whole world, I will take you away." To ease his mood, I joked, "Remember to give me a signal then, how about we smash a cup as a signal?" "No smashing cups." Ethan rubbed his face against mine and said, "I will place an ear of wheat on the moon. Arista, your name is our signal." With a ding, the past memories were mercilessly shattered. I pulled myself out of my reverie. Seeing the elevator arrive at the 10th floor, the hands of time turned back to the present. I suddenly didn't dare to step out of that door. Until a familiar voice came from the hallway, with a casual, light-hearted tone. "Come on, everyone, be a pal, give me a break. I just want to take a picture of my bride." Is that too much to ask? In an instant, I lost my soul. When Ethan used to get injured playing basketball and used the pity card on me, he would say, "Come on, Arista, be a pal, help me put on a band-aid, okay?" When Ethan couldn't bear to part with me and played the rascal, he would say, "Arista, my dear Arista, conk on, be a pal, don't leave me alone. Who told you to take such an ugly photo of Connie? This is your punishment." The laughter of the bridesmaids and groomsmen echoed through the door and down the hallway. "We'll let you in after we've taken enough pictures." "Groom, you just wait outside for now." I walked out of the elevator in a daze. In the dim light, I saw that person not far away, locked outside the door. He was dressed in a suit, leaning against the door with a helpless smile on his face. I stared at him in a trance. Sensing something, he turned his head. Across a mere 10 meters, across the long 5 years. Our eyes met, just for a moment, just one look. I suddenly realized with absolute clarity. He was no longer my Ethan Tilney. From 17 to 22. Ethan and I went from school to graduation, met each other's parents, lived together for 2 years, and were just a step away from marriage. The night before I went abroad, Ethan was already planning our wedding. Because my father had a sudden accident abroad and was critically ill. We didn't have time to say goodbye and parted hurriedly at the airport. The last thing Ethan said to me was, "When you come back, we'll get married." I never expected that once I left, I would completely lose contact with him. I tried to return home, but every flight I took was cancelled, every car I rode broke down, and I even fainted when I tried to walk. Everything in my world seemed normal, but whenever I tried to find Ethan, my surroundings would instantly turn into an isolated island. The will of this novel world was stopping me. From 22 to 27. Between Ethan and me, there was a complete blank. Until yesterday, I suddenly received the first message from Ethan in 5 years. "I'm getting married, will you come back?" I came back. Crossing 5 years of mountains and seas, I walked up to that unfamiliar Ethan Tilney, unrecognizable. He didn't even dare to look into my eyes. "Arista." Arista Wheatley. His voice, distant as if from another world. He said, "I'm sorry, you're too late. Only 30 minutes left until the wedding starts. Seems like it couldn't be any later." I don't know how I managed to smile, but I inexplicably started laughing. "It's not too late, I still have time to congratulate you." Ethan froze, his words stuck in his throat. But I suddenly became talkative. "It's me who should apologize, I forgot to bring a gift for you." "Oh right, there's a bracelet for the daughter-in-law of the Tilney family." "I can't wear it, it's for you." I lowered my head to search my bag for the jade bracelet, but found nothing on me. "Where's my bag? Why is it gone?" I panicked, searching everywhere, my eyes almost sweating. "I've been carrying it with me, how could it be gone?" "It must be here." Just as I was about to rummage through the trash can in the hallway, Ethan grabbed my hand. "Arista." Like a jolt of electricity, I reflexively shook off his hand. This time, it was me who didn't dare to look at his face. I hastily stepped back. "It must be in the hotel, I'll go find it." I turned around, stumbling and running away. "Arista!" Ethan called my name from behind. But he didn't chase after me. Because room 1019 opened, and someone called him. "Ethan, the wedding is about to start, I ran into the fire escape and could no longer hear the sounds from the hallway. I ran and ran, blindly running in panic. I didn't know how long I had been running when I tripped and tumbled down the stairs, landing awkwardly on a corner platform. My palms were scraped, my arms bruised, and my knees were bleeding. I slowly knelt on the ground, covering my hand and muttering, "Ethan, it hurts so much." A rough, warm hand opened my palm, and above me, I heard Ethan's pained and angry reprimand. "Silly girl, why are you running?" He gently wiped the dust from my palm, his actions tender but his words stern. "It's just a bracelet. If it's lost, it's lost. Who cares? As long as I'm alive, if anyone bullies you, I'll stand up for you. Why are you scared? I'm not by your side to wipe your tears, so you are not allowed to cry." I looked up, about to retort, "I'm not crying." But I froze when I saw the empty staircase. The wound on my palm was still covered in dust, only now it was mixed with moisture. I raised my hand to my face, feeling the wetness. The tears I had held back for 5 years burst forth like a flood. The pain in my chest was so intense that my teeth chattered, and I suddenly coughed up blood. In these 5 years, I had buried my father, bid farewell to my mother, and wandered alone in a foreign land. Plagued by illness, I survived on one thought alone. Ethan was waiting for me. How could he not wait for me? Today is your wedding day, I can't cry. I laughed and cried, wiping my tears and talking to myself. Unaware, someone had already approached from behind and carefully handed me a white veil. I'm sorry, are you okay? It was the bride's veil. I looked up along the veil. I saw a bright and radiant face. Curved eyebrows like a crescent moon, clear almond-shaped eyes. Even without the embellishment of bridal makeup, she was already sweet and beautiful. She looked exactly like the description in the novel book. I didn't bring tissues, your wound, you should get it treated soon. Connie Storm explained apologetically, handing me the veil again. I don't need this, maybe you can use this to bandage your wound first. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. All words felt meaningless. You must be feeling really sad right now, I understand. No, I probably can't understand. I've never lost a lover like you have. Seeing no reaction from me, Connie Storm simply took my hand. Especially since you've lost someone like Ethan Tilney, someone like him. Connie sighed, shaking her head, and gently used a corner of the veil to brush away the grit from my palm. As if afraid of hurting me, she blew softly on the wound. Even though it's not my fault, I still want to say, I'm sorry. These past years must have been really hard for you? Ethan said he dreamt about you, dreamt that you were coughing up blood. Have you also encountered many dangers? It was more than just dangers. To come back, I had died 27 times. Just 7 days ago, I was punished and ended up in the emergency room for trying to return to my country. At that time, I thought I was surely going to die. But hearing Connie's sigh, my mind fixated on that one word also. What happened to Ethan? I grasped Connie's hand through the veil, pleading with my eyes. I finally managed to ask the question I had always wanted to ask but never dared to. Will he come back? Actually, everything was anticipated. After 5 years of no news, even a background character like me has faced so many hardships. Ethan Tilney, as the male lead in this novel world, if he wants to resist fate and the original plot of the novel, he would probably encounter even more torment. I once harbored a fluke. But the moment I received the text message that Ethan was getting married, I received the verdict from fate. My Ethan Tilney was gone. I lingered at the hotel entrance, not daring to approach, always thinking that if I didn't come, I could pretend that Ethan was still around. After seeing the wheat ears on the moon, I harbored a fluke again. The moment I saw Ethan's eyes in the hotel corridor, I completely fell into hell. That person was not my Ethan Tilney. 10 years ago, after reading that book, Ethan angrily retorted, that person is definitely not me. A prophecy that came true. Now that person really isn't him. Where did my Ethan Tilney go? I dared not ask. I wanted to pretend he was Ethan. I wanted to pretend Ethan just had a change of heart. I wanted to pretend Ethan was still alive. But I fell, and in the illusion, I saw Ethan again. I clutched at my last straw, hoarsely asking once more, will Ethan still come back? Connie stopped moving, pursed her lips, looked at me, and sighed sympathetically. He is waiting for you at the end of time. I was stunned. A stern shout suddenly came from the top of the stairs. Connie Storm. The male lead stood on the upper step of the stairs. His face was hidden in the darkness, his gaze swept over me and quickly landed on Connie. The wedding is about to start, we should go. Connie rolled her eyes and ignored him. Look, for the past few years, he's been following the plot of the novel with me, acting as the male lead. He plays the role perfectly, but in reality, he's fierce and heartless, far worse than your Ethan Tilney. Ethan never betrayed you, on the contrary, he did it for you. Connie, that's enough. The male lead walked down the steps, his face showing a coldness Ethan would never have. Why so fierce? I'm just saying a few words, it's not going to kill anyone. Blood trickled from the corner of Connie's mouth, she wiped it away nonchalantly and stood up. Death would be better. I never wanted to take on such a task of breaking up lovers. How many times? The male lead snatched the veil from her hand, crumpled it, and stuffed it into her mouth without expression. Connie's eyes widened in horror, forgetting to react. The male lead squatted down, put down the slippers he was holding, and lightly patted her calf through the wedding dress. Will you put them on yourself, or shall I help you? Only then did I notice that Connie had run out barefoot in that heavy wedding dress to find me. Connie mumbled and quickly slipped her feet into the shoes. Before she could get angry, the male lead suddenly turned his head and asked me, "How did you figure it out?" How did I figure out he wasn't Ethan Tilney? I stared at that familiar face, chuckled softly. No need to see. Love is an indescribable intuition. He nodded and suddenly blurted out, "The sixth time." I couldn't understand his meaning. It seemed like both he and Connie couldn't reveal the secrets of heaven, or they would be punished by the novel world's consciousness. But his sixth time seemed to follow Connie's how many times already. What did it imply? What had Ethan gone through all these years? This wedding is part of the script, but it's also something he left for you. The male lead suddenly took off the brooch from the front of his suit and handed it to my palm. If you want to know what he left behind, see for yourself. After saying this, he stood up with an indifferent expression. Louis, you. Connie just uttered a surprised sound when Louis covered her mouth. Let's go, the wedding is about to start. He dragged Connie up the stairs, gradually disappearing into the darkness. Only Connie's exclamation was left. Who's marrying you? Ah. Why are you spitting blood? I looked at the mini wheat brooch in my hand, my vision gradually blurred. This wedding was originally prepared by Ethan for me. 5 years ago, not long after we graduated from university, he was silently preparing for our wedding. He always hid in the study, drawing and writing on manuscript paper, and resolutely refused to let me see. On the night before I went abroad, I was still pestering him with questions. If you see it, there won't be any surprise. After much pleading, Ethan reluctantly revealed a bit. Okay, I'll tell you, the theme of our wedding is the title of a book, the rest you can guess. Although Ethan always called me Miss Wheat or Arista. I guessed it was Neruda's Roses, guessed it was Lytton Strachey's Starry River. But I never guessed that the theme Ethan used was wheat. How could cheap wheat be as romantic as roses? Until this very moment, I finally understood that Ethan was referencing. Probably Makio Haruno's love and wheat maturing together. I tightly squeezed that brooch, so tight that my palm hurt from the wound. The next moment, I suddenly discovered a very small piece of paper hidden in the clasp of the brooch. My heart raced. I hurriedly opened it, only to see 5 words. The trash can on the 10th floor. I found a diary in the trash can. The pages were yellowed and the edges curled, as if it had been read countless times. Like a silent declaration, the cover of the diary boldly stated, "Male lead Ethan Tilney, female lead Arista Wheatley." With trembling hands, I opened the first page, and familiar wild handwriting came into view. It was a brief preface. To 17-year-old Arista Wheatley. Arista, I am 17-year-old Ethan Tilney. Today we read a ridiculous romance novel, and the male lead had my name. I was very angry. Even though you promised me you wouldn't believe the things written in that book. And you promised me that if I made a mistake, you would come and take me away. But now it's 3 in the morning, and I can't stop thinking about it. I can't sleep. All right, I'm still sulking. I'm a petty person. I hate this prank by fate, hate that it made you a mere passerby in my story, and I hate its narrative. It's absurd. Does it think it's the only one who can write a story? I'm very angry. So I want to write my own story. A story with just the two of us, from school to wedding, from 17 to 97, a beautiful story of love and commitment. I hope this book will be written by me and my Miss Wheat, and I plan to spend my whole life completing it. So, I have to ask first. Miss Wheat, would you be the female lead of my story? After a moment of silent blank space. At the bottom of the page, there was a sudden scrawl of messy, frantic small text. Ah. What am I writing? Am I proposing? Is 17 too early? Arista definitely won't believe in my determination. All right, I can wait. Wait until we grow up, wait until the wheat is ripe. Arista, I won't break my promise. But. I turned the preface page and saw the first line of text. It was written by 22-year-old Ethan Tilney. Arista, I'm sorry, I fear I have to break my promise. Today is the third day since you left, and I still can't reach you. I sent someone to the hospital address you gave me, but all information about you seems to have vanished into thin air, and no one can find you. I want to go find you, but it feels like another person has taken residence in my body. I don't know what he has done while occupying my body. Since you left, I often become confused and my memories are blurry. Am I developing schizophrenia? If I am, I can't marry you, then Arista, you must forgive me. No, forgiveness would mean you don't care, so Arista, you must not forgive me. Look at me, I must really be sick, I'm starting to talk nonsense. Mom just came by to give me some medicine. Only then did I realize I was wrong. Today is actually the 10th day since you left. Arista, I met that Connie Storm. She came to the company as an intern, and on the first day, she spilled coffee on my suit. Such a cliché beginning. Of course, I made her pay for the cleaning fee and told her never to enter my office again. But strangely, in the blink of an eye, she inexplicably became my assistant. It was that person inside me who did this. Arista, I'm so angry. But I can't get rid of him. Arista, come into my dreams and comfort me. At least let me know if you are safe. Arista, you used to ask me every year what my birthday wish was. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid it wouldn't come true if I said it out loud. But now, I really want you to know. My birthday wish has been the same every year. When the wheat is ripe, I want to marry my Arista. I really want you to know. The Ethan Tilney in the book might have proposed to the female lead 5 times. But your Ethan Tilney, from 17 to 22, all his wishes were about you. Until today, I am about to turn 23. Forgive me for changing my birthday wish this year. If you want to know what my new wish is, come back and ask me quickly. If you don't come back soon, I don't know how much longer I can wait. Alright, I can write my wish here for you to see. I hope any passing deity will turn a blind eye and be kind. Ethan Tilney's 23rd birthday wish is for Arista Wheatley to be safe. Arista, don't blame Mom. Every time I want to go find you, I get sick, and my illness is getting worse. I had a severe car accident on the way to the airport. She was terrified. She sees Connie Storm as my life-saving medicine, don't blame her. Arista, I had a dream today. I dreamed that on the first day of our sophomore year, you didn't sit next to me but instead sat in the front row. But I still noticed you quickly. You always sat alone reading, not liking to smile or talk, like a little iceberg Wheat, so adorable. I called you Miss Wheat, and you still looked at me with that same look as if I were an idiot. I enjoyed it so much, I couldn't help but laugh. You surely know the rest of the story. I still fell in love with Miss Wheat. It's so strange, I was so easily attracted to Miss Wheat, why didn't I notice you at all in our freshman year? It must have been a trick played on us by fate. But fate doesn't know. No matter how many times we start over, no matter how our beginning is, as long as Miss Wheat appears, I will fall in love with Miss Wheat countless times. Arista, I dreamed of you coughing up blood again. Lewis said that because we defied the original plot of the novel, this is our punishment. So you were also trying hard to reach me. I should feel happy, but thinking of you suffering, I can't be happy. Mom can't tell me and Lewis apart now, this is good. But sometimes I wonder, can you tell that person isn't me? I both hope you can and can't recognize it. It's been 5 years, I really want to see you again, but it seems too late, you entered the emergency room. The plot is coming to an end, the consciousness of the novel world wants me to make a choice. What nonsense, doesn't it know that my only choice from beginning to end is you? But forgive me, Arista, I fear I have to leave you alone. Forgive me. I can't attend our wedding. At the end of the diary, there were messy lines of text, barely forming sentences. Like a terminally ill person holding an uncooperative pen, struggling to leave something behind but unable to. From the scribbles, I barely pieced together Ethan's last line. Seeing these words is like meeting me. I wish my Arista a long life and peace every year. I hugged the diary, curled up next to the trash can, and finally broke down in tears. Ethan, my Ethan. If I had the chance to take you away, the crazy you, the changed you, the amnesiac you, the unfaithful you, any version of you would be fine. As long as there's even a tiny chance, I would definitely be that villainous supporting character. But, Ethan, you didn't tell me my opponent was fate. You also didn't tell me. When I completely lose you, how do I hold on to someone who no longer exists? I'm so useless. I can only helplessly, desperately beg over and over again. God, please. Give my Ethan back to me. I don't know how long I cried. I only know that my heart hurt so much, the pain slowly pulling me into darkness, and I just wanted to sleep. A sigh suddenly echoed in the hallway. If I had known you would cry this much, I wouldn't have written the diary. I hazily opened my eyes and saw Ethan again. He was squatting in front of me, his brows furrowed in concern, coaxing me with a pained expression. Arista, good girl, stop crying, we'll see each other again. I stared at him blankly for a moment, then suddenly smiled. You're not the real Ethan Tilney, you're lying to me. Ethan also smiled helplessly, his smile uglier than crying. Today is the 7th day of my death. I'm real, I've come back to see my Arista. It's my fault, making my Arista wait too long. I've never been a girl who liked to act spoiled. But in front of Ethan, I always unconsciously became more willful. When he apologized, I couldn't help feeling even more aggrieved. You clearly promised to wait for me to come back. Today was supposed to be our wedding, how could you leave me alone? It's my fault. Ethan reached out to touch my face, but stopped as he got close. I bit my lip in sadness, and before he could withdraw his hand, I tilted my head to rest my cheek against his palm. Ethan then smiled gently. Next time, Arista, next time I'll marry you early, I won't wait until we're 22. Will there be a next time? Yes. This is what the world owes me. Ethan pretended to pinch my face from a distance. But before the next time comes, Arista, you have to live well, live happily, live a long life. If something happens to you, the world's consciousness will blame me. What if it doesn't give me another chance? I think Ethan must be lying to me, he wants to trick me into living on. But even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance, even if all of this is fake, how could I dare refuse him? Ethan, you're so cruel to me. I'm sorry, Arista, don't cry. You haven't guessed the theme of this wedding, have you? I hid the answer in the wheat ears by the wall of the banquet hall. Get up and take a look, okay? I wanted to say I already guessed it, I didn't want to go, I didn't want to look. But seeing the plea and weakness in Ethan's eyes, I instantly understood. I fixed my gaze on Ethan, looking at his brows, his eyes, inch by inch, unwilling to part. It felt like a century had passed, yet also just a blink of an eye. I wiped away my tears, got up from the ground, and forced a smile. Okay, I'll go. The wedding had already started. I walked into the banquet hall like a wandering soul through the side door, without drawing anyone's attention. On the stage, the bride and groom stood facing each other, and the groom was about to give his wedding vows. From the corner of the wall decorations, I spotted an ear of wheat with a small moon hanging on it. The tip of the moon was attached to a string, and at the end of the string hung a card. I flipped open the card and finally saw the answer Ethan had hidden 5 years ago. It was a handwritten letter from him. The wheat is ripe. It's hot every day. Tomorrow morning, I will harvest it. My love is also ripe. My heart is burning. I hope you, my dear Miss Wheat, are the one to harvest it. My hands trembled as I clutched the card, and suddenly a burst of microphone static filled my ears. I turned abruptly and looked towards the stage. In that moment, it was as if I saw the young and vibrant Ethan standing on the stage. He had a wild, carefree smile on his face, and his gaze pierced through the noisy crowd, focusing only on me. He was saying to me, I want to offer my open heart, along with the wheat field I guard, the ripe grains, and my humble self. I want to give all of this to you. Will you accept it? My dear Miss Wheat. Everything seemed to return to the beginning of the story. At 17, in the library, Ethan and I opened that book. Ethan was so angry that night he hid under the covers, trying to write me as his female lead. He couldn't finish it in a lifetime, but he had written our story from the very start. It was a book. The title of the book was Loving You is Like Loving Life. When I was 17, I fell in love with a boy named Ethan Tilney. He said that when the wheat was ripe, he would bring the harvest to marry me. At 22, before the wheat ripened, I went abroad. In the bustling airport, I asked him to wait for me to come back. At 27, I came back. I came back to tell him, Ethan Tilney, I am willing to marry you. I came back to attend his funeral.